A poor baker changed a sick CEO's life. What she did next shocked everyone. The bakery opened before sunrise. The lights were always on early, even when no one came. The smell of fresh bread drifted into the quiet street, warm and gentle, like an invitation most people ignored. The baker wiped her hands on a faded apron and looked toward the door for the third time in 10 minutes. Nothing. She was used to that. Her bakery sat between a closed laundromat and a shiny coffee shop that sold drinks more expensive than her daily bread. People passed by holding phones, rushing to work, rarely slowing down. She didn't complain. She kneaded dough slowly, carefully, like each loaf mattered. Because to her, it did. That morning felt different though. Not louder. Not busier. Just heavier. Outside, a black luxury car rolled to a stop. It didn't belong on that street. The engine cut off. The door opened. A man stepped out. He wore an expensive coat that hung loosely on his thin frame. His face was pale. His movements were careful, like walking took effort. He stood still for a moment, staring at the bakery window, at the bread. Then he looked away. He had not eaten properly in a long time. He told himself he wasn't hungry. He told everyone that. But his body told a different story. Something about the smell pulled him closer to spite himself. He opened the door. The bell rang softly. The baker looked up. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was calm, not cheerful, not forced, just real. The man nodded but didn't answer. His eyes moved across the shelves. Loaves lined up neatly. Simple, plain, honest, nothing fancy. This isn't what I need, he thought. But he stayed. "What can I get you?" she asked. He hesitated. "Just one," he said quietly, pointing at a loaf near the back. She wrapped it carefully in brown paper. He reached for his wallet. She noticed his hands. They shook slightly. She also noticed how his eyes avoided the bread, like it was something dangerous. "That'll be 5, she said gently. He handed her cash without looking up. As she passed him the bread, their fingers brushed for a second. He flinched. She noticed. "Are you all right?" she asked. It wasn't curiosity, it was concern. "I'm fine," he replied quickly, but his voice didn't agree. He turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. Something inside him felt exposed, like he had been seen without meaning to be. He stepped outside. The baker watched him through the window as he walked a few steps, then stopped again. Slowly, he dropped the loaf into a trash bin. She inhaled sharply, not in anger, in sadness. A few minutes later, he was gone. The bakery was quiet again. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty street. Then she did something unexpected. She grabbed another loaf, wrapped it carefully, and stepped outside. The street was still empty, except for the black car parked nearby. The man sat inside, staring at nothing. She walked up and tapped lightly on the window. He startled, rolled it down halfway. "Yes?" he asked, confused. She held out the bread. "You forgot this," she said. "I didn't," he replied. "I know," she said softly. "But I made it for eating, not throwing away," he frowned. "I paid already. This one is free," she said. He looked at her like she had spoken another language. "I don't take charity," he said. She met his eyes. "This isn't charity," she replied. "It's bread." He stared at it. Then at her. Something about her calm unsettled him more than judgment ever could. "Why?" he asked. She shrugged. "Because no one should be afraid of food." The words hit harder than she knew. His hand tightened on the steering wheel. He took the bread, not quickly, not gratefully, carefully. "Thank you," he muttered. She nodded and stepped back. The car drove away. The baker returned to her shop. She didn't smile. She didn't feel proud. She simply went back to work. That evening, in a large, empty apartment filled with glass and silence, the man sat alone at a long table. The bread rested in front of him. He stared at it for a long time. His phone buzzed with work messages. He ignored them. Slowly, he tore off a small piece, just enough to prove he could. He raised it to his mouth, paused, then took a bite. It was warm, simple, not demanding. He swallowed. For the first time in a long while, the tightness in his chest eased, not his body, but something deeper. He didn't finish the loaf, but he didn't throw it away either. The next morning, the bakery bell rang again. The baker looked up. It was him. He stood at the door, looking uncertain. "I'll take the same one," he said quietly. She nodded, and this time, she wrapped the bread a little more carefully. He didn't remember the last time he had eaten without guilt. The bread sat on the passenger seat as he drove away from the bakery, wrapped in plain paper. No logo, no promise. Just bread. That made it harder. His life had been built on control, numbers, discipline, precision. Every meeting timed. Every word measured. Every weakness hidden. Food was the one thing he couldn't control anymore. At work, no one noticed. They saw the tailored suit, the sharp eyes, the quiet authority. They didn't see how loose the jacket had become, how he avoided lunch meetings, how his hands shook when stress climbed too high. They called it dedication. He called it survival. Back at his office, the building felt colder than usual. Glass walls, bright lights, no warmth. He placed the bread on his desk and stared at it like it was a problem waiting to expose him. He opened emails instead. Deadlines, profits, complaints. Hours passed. The bread stayed untouched. By evening, his stomach burned, but he ignored it. Hunger felt safer than losing control. He finally went home. The apartment was large and silent, too clean, too empty. He placed the bread on the kitchen counter and leaned against the sink, breathing slowly. He remembered the baker's voice. No one should be afraid of food. He laughed quietly at that. If only it were that simple. He tore a small piece from the loaf. Just enough to say he tried. He chewed slowly, waiting for the familiar wave of shame. It didn't come. Instead, something unexpected happened. Nothing. No pressure, no judgment. No voice telling him he had failed. He stopped chewing, swallowed. The bread was warm, soft, ordinary. He sat down at the table, surprised by the quiet inside his head. The next morning, he returned to the bakery. He told himself it was convenience, habit, location. But when the bell rang, his chest loosened slightly. The baker looked up. "You're back," she said. Not surprised. Not impressed. Just noticing. "Yes," he replied. "The same one." She nodded and wrapped the bread. He noticed she didn't rush. Didn't talk to fill the silence. That mattered. When she handed him the loaf, she added something extra inside the paper. He noticed the weight but said nothing. At home, he unwrapped it. A small note slid out. No advice, no instructions. Just 4 words. "Eat when you're ready." He stared at it longer than he should have. That afternoon, he tried something new. He ate sitting down. No phone, no emails. No mirror, just bread. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Days passed. He returned every morning. Some days he spoke. Some days he didn't. The baker never pushed. She never asked questions, but she noticed things. The way his eyes looked less hollow, the way his steps grew steadier, the way he stayed a little longer each time. One morning, she placed a cup of warm tea beside the bread. He frowned. "I didn't order that." "I know," she said. "It helps." He hesitated, then accepted it. The warmth spread through his hands first, then his chest. "Why are you doing this?" he asked suddenly. She paused. "Because I recognize hunger that isn't about food," she said. He looked away quickly. Something inside him cracked, just slightly. That evening, alone again, he found himself staring at the note she had written earlier. "Eat when you're ready." For the first time in years, he didn't hate himself for stopping. The next day, something changed. As he paid, he placed extra cash on the counter. She pushed it back. "No," she said. "You're running a business," he replied. "Take it." She shook her head. "Not for this." For what? For healing, she said quietly. The word made him uncomfortable. I'm not broken, he said too quickly. She met his eyes. I didn't say you were, she replied. That night, he didn't eat dinner. Not out of fear. Out of exhaustion. The world felt heavy again. The next morning, he didn't show up. The bakery door stayed quiet. The baker glanced at it once, then again. By noon, worry settled in her chest. Late afternoon, the bell rang, hard this time. She rushed to the counter. It wasn't him. A stranger stood there, out of breath. Are you the baker? He asked. Yes, she replied. There's a man outside, he said. He collapsed near your shop. Her heart dropped. She grabbed her coat and ran. Outside, she saw him lying on the pavement, pale, shaking, eyes half open. He looked at her weakly. I didn't want to scare you, he whispered. She knelt beside him. You didn't, she said. You trusted me. She took his hand and made a decision that would change everything. The pavement was cold. The baker knelt beside him without thinking about her clothes or the people watching. Her hands moved fast, but her voice stayed calm. Look at me, she said softly. His eyes fluttered open. I didn't mean to cause trouble, he whispered. You didn't, she said. You came back. That's enough. Someone nearby asked if they should call an ambulance. She hesitated. Not because she didn't care. Because she understood fear, the kind that comes when control is taken away. Give me a minute, she said. Please. She helped him sit up slowly. His body felt light, fragile, like it didn't belong to him anymore. Can you stand? She asked. He nodded weakly. She supported his weight and guided him inside the bakery. The familiar smell of bread wrapped around him like a memory. She sat him down on a chair behind the counter. Warm, she said, placing a blanket around his shoulders. No questions. No judgment. No panic. Just care. She poured soup into a bowl, simple, thin, gentle. You don't have to eat, she said. Just hold it. He wrapped his hands around the bowl. The heat made his fingers ache, then relax. Tears filled his eyes without warning. I don't understand why you're helping me, he said. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat across from him. You know, she began. People think hunger looks loud. He frowned slightly. It doesn't, she continued. It looks quiet, controlled, polite. Her gaze drifted toward the bakery window. When I was younger, she said, I watched my mother skip meals so my siblings could eat. He listened. She never complained, the baker said. She smiled, worked harder. Told us she wasn't hungry. She swallowed. I believed her, she added. Until I didn't. The room stayed silent. I learned early that hunger isn't always about food, she said. Sometimes it's about fear. Or shame, or wanting to disappear. He lowered his eyes. That look you have, she said gently. I've seen it before. He tightened his grip on the bowl. I didn't plan to give you bread for free, she said. It just felt wrong to charge you. Because I look weak? He asked. No, she replied. Because you look alone. The word hit him harder than any diagnosis ever could. He took a small sip of soup, just enough to say thank you without speaking. She didn't rush him. I bake because it keeps me grounded, she said. Flour doesn't care who you are. Dough doesn't judge you. He let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. At work, he said slowly, everyone watches me eat. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Because if I don't, he said. They ask questions, she nodded. And questions feel dangerous. Yes, he admitted. She leaned back slightly. That's why I don't ask you anything, she said. You'll tell me when you're ready. He looked at her. No one's ever done that, he said. She smiled faintly. That's a shame. Outside, the street moved on. Cars passed. Life continued. Inside the bakery, something fragile but important was forming. Why do you keep coming back? She asked him softly. He thought about it. The bread doesn't demand anything, he said. And neither do you, she nodded. That's because eating shouldn't feel like a test, she said. He finished half the soup. That was more than he had eaten in days. When he stood up, he swayed slightly. She moved closer, not touching unless he needed it. You shouldn't go back to that apartment tonight, she said. He stiffened. I don't want pity. This isn't pity, she replied. It's prevention. He looked at the floor. I don't sleep there, he admitted. I just exist, she sighed softly. I have a small place, she said. Nothing fancy. But it's warm, quiet. He looked up sharply. You don't even know me, he said. She met his eyes. I know enough, she replied. Silence fell again. He hesitated, then nodded. Just for tonight, he said. She smiled. Just for tonight, she agreed. As they locked up the bakery together, the evening air felt different, not lighter, but less heavy. Neither of them knew it yet. But that single choice, to give bread for free, had already changed both their lives. The call came just after midnight. His phone buzzed once, then again. He stared at it from the couch, heart racing. Work, always work, he answered. The voice on the other end was sharp, urgent, demanding, a problem that needed fixing now. He listened, nodded, promised. When the call ended, the room felt smaller. He hadn't eaten dinner. He hadn't noticed. The old weight pressed down on his chest again, the familiar tightness that told him he was slipping. By the time the sun came up, he hadn't slept. He still went to the bakery. He always did. The bell rang, but this time it sounded different. Too loud, too sudden. She looked up and knew immediately. He stood there, pale, eyes unfocused, breathing shallow. You're not okay, she said. I am, he replied automatically. He always said that. She stepped closer. Sit. He shook his head. I don't have time. She didn't raise her voice. You do, she said. You just don't think you're allowed to. His hands trembled as he leaned on the counter. I can't go back there, he said quietly. Where? She asked. To that place, he replied. Where everything depends on me not failing. She nodded slowly. You didn't fail, she said. You got tired. That word hit him harder than anything else. Tired, not weak, not broken, just tired. His knees buckled. She caught him before he fell. People outside noticed. Someone moved closer, ready to help. Please, she said gently. Give us a moment. She guided him to the back room and sat him down. His breathing was uneven. His eyes glassy. Look at me, she said. Just me, he tried. I don't want to go to a hospital, he whispered. She understood. I won't force you, she said. But I won't leave you alone either. She brought water. Warm soup, not too much. He sipped slowly. I don't know how to live without control, he admitted. She sat across from him. You don't need to figure that out today, she said. Just survive this moment. Tears slid down his face without warning. He didn't wipe them away. I'm scared, he said. She nodded. I know. When he was steady enough to stand, she helped him lock the bakery. The street was quiet, empty. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere safe, she replied. At her apartment, she set him on the couch and handed him a blanket. You don't have to talk, she said. You don't have to eat. He looked at her. Why are you doing this? He asked again. She paused. Because if you go back to that empty place tonight, she said softly, you might not come back tomorrow. The truth settled between them. He stayed. The next morning, sunlight filled the room again. He woke slower this time, not panicked. Not ashamed, just present. She handed him tea. Today, she said, we do nothing important. He frowned. Everything I do is important. She smiled gently. Then today we rest. Days passed. He didn't return to work right away. Emails piled up. Calls went unanswered. For the first time he let them. She taught him small routines. Wake up, drink water, eat when ready, rest without guilt. One afternoon, he stood by the window and said something unexpected. "I don't know who I am without my title." She wiped the counter slowly. "Then maybe," she said, "you finally get to meet yourself." That night, he slept deeply again. But this time something else changed. He didn't wake up afraid. He woke up hungry, real hunger. He sat at the table and ate a full bowl of soup. Finished it. Looked up at her in disbelief. "I did it," he said. She smiled. "Yes," she replied. "You did." A week later, he stood at the door with his coat on. "I need to face my life," he said, "but not the old way." She nodded. "I won't let you disappear," she said. "You already didn't," he replied. As he stepped outside, he turned back. "Can I come back?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "Always," she said. He walked away, stronger, not healed, but no longer alone. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet thought formed, one that would soon change everything. What if power could be used differently? He didn't go back to his old life the way people expected. He went back differently. The office lights felt too bright when he returned, the chairs too stiff, the silence too tense. People watched him carefully, like they were afraid he might disappear again. "You look better," someone said. He nodded. He didn't explain. At lunchtime, he skipped the boardroom meeting and left the building instead. He drove straight to the bakery. The bell rang. She looked up and smiled like she had been expecting him. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to pretend today," he replied. She handed him bread without asking questions. He sat at the small table near the window, eating slowly, not hiding, not rushing. That alone shocked him. A week later, something unexpected happened. The bakery's landlord showed up. Rent had increased again. She listened quietly, nodded, and closed the door when he left. Her hands trembled slightly as she returned to kneading dough. He noticed. "How bad is it?" he asked. She hesitated. "Bad enough." That night he couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. The next morning, he stood in the bakery before opening time. "I want you to come stay with me," he said. She froze. "That's not what you think," he added quickly. "Not charity. Not ownership." She crossed her arms. "I don't need saving," she said. "I know," he replied. "You're saving me." She shook her head. "I don't belong in that world. That's why it needs you," he said. She laughed softly. "I bake bread. I don't attend meetings." "Then don't," he said. "Just live." Silence filled the room. She had never been asked that before. That evening, she visited his apartment for the first time. Glass walls, cold floors, furniture chosen for style, not comfort. She set her bag down and looked around. "No wonder you were starving," she said quietly. He smiled for the first time without effort. The next day, she did something that shocked him even more. She cooked, not fancy food, not expensive ingredients, soup, bread, routine. She opened the windows, moved furniture, put a plant near the table. The space began to feel human. Weeks passed. Something changed. He stopped skipping meals. She stopped worrying about rent. They shared mornings instead of schedules. One afternoon, he invited her to the office. "Just to see it," he said. She stood in the boardroom wearing her apron, hands dusted with flour. Executives stared. "This is the baker," he said simply. "The one who reminded me how to eat." No laughter came, only silence. Later, he offered her a position. A generous salary. A title. She refused. "I don't want your power," she said. "I want you to use it better." That sentence changed him. That night, he made a decision that would shock everyone around him. He canceled a major contract, one that hurt small food workers. The board protested. He didn't argue. He walked out. The next morning, headlines whispered, but didn't yet understand. At the bakery, she handed him bread as usual. "You look nervous," she said. "I changed something," he replied. She studied his face. "Good," she said. "Change should feel uncomfortable." He laughed quietly. For the first time in his life, discomfort didn't feel dangerous. It felt honest. And in that honesty, a new future was forming. One that neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. The boardroom had never been this quiet. The long table gleamed under white lights. Faces sat stiff around it. Charts waited on screens that no one looked at anymore. He stood at the head of the table, calm. "I'm stepping back from the deal," he said. Someone laughed nervously. "You can't be serious." "I am," he replied. A voice snapped back. "That contract alone feeds this company." He nodded. "It starves too many people outside it." Silence followed. This was not the man they knew. "You're making this emotional," another executive said. He shook his head. "I'm making it human," murmurs spread. "You've been different since your absence," someone said carefully. "Who's influencing you?" He didn't hesitate. "The baker," he said. The room froze. "The baker?" Someone repeated. "Yes," he said. "The one who fed me when I couldn't feed myself." A few faces hardened. Others looked confused. "You're risking everything," the chairperson warned. He met their eyes. "I already did. And I survived." That meeting ended without applause, but the message had landed. By afternoon, rumors spread through the building. By evening, they reached the press. CEO cancels major contract. Sources cite personal reasons. He didn't read the article. He drove straight to the bakery. She was closing up when he arrived. "You look like someone who started a fire," she said. He smiled faintly. "I might have." She handed him a loaf. "Good. Fires clear space." The next day, he returned with something else. A folder. He set it gently on the counter. "What's this?" she asked. "An offer," he said. "Not money, not ownership." She didn't touch it. "Go on," she said. "I want to restructure the company," he explained. "Support small producers, fair wages, local sourcing." She watched him carefully. "And where do I fit in?" she asked. He swallowed. "I want you involved, as a voice, as a check on me." She laughed softly. "I'm not your conscience." "No," he said. "You're my reminder." She opened the folder, read silently, then closed it. "No," she said. He stiffened. "Not because it's wrong," she added, "but because it's incomplete." He waited. "You can't build dignity on one person's kindness," she said. "You have to build systems that don't need saving." The word stayed with him. "I'll revise it," he said. She nodded. "Then we'll talk." That night, the backlash grew louder. Emails flooded in, calls from investors, pressure from every angle. For the first time, he didn't respond immediately. He cooked instead, soup, bread, the same routine she had taught him. The next morning, he released a public statement. No excuses, no branding, just truth. He spoke about burnout, about hunger, about how success without care nearly destroyed him. He didn't mention her name. The world reacted quickly. Some praised him, some mocked him, some questioned his stability. The stock dipped. He watched it happen without panic. At the bakery, she read the headlines quietly. People began coming in, curious. Some asked questions. Some just bought bread and left extra money on the counter. She didn't change her routine. She never did. One afternoon, he walked in looking tired, but steady. "They're pushing back," he said. She handed him tea. "That means it matters. They want me to choose," he said. "Profit or principle?" She met his eyes. "Choose people," she said. "The rest will follow or fall." That evening, he made the hardest decision of his career. He opened the company to review. Invited workers to speak. Published wages. Canceled exploitative contracts. The board threatened removal. He didn't beg. He stepped aside voluntarily. News broke the next morning. CEO steps down after radical shift in company values. The world gasped. At the bakery, she placed fresh bread on the shelf. He stood there, no longer protected by title or power. "Are you okay?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I've never been more honest," he said. She smiled. "Then you're doing better than most," she replied. Outside, people lined up, not just for bread, but for something else they couldn't quite name. Inside, the baker and the former CEO stood quietly, knowing one truth. Power hadn't been taken from him. It had finally been used. The line outside the bakery stretched farther than it ever had before. Not because of the bread, because of the story. People whispered as they waited. Some held phones. Others held newspapers with headlines folded, just enough to hide the name, but show the words everyone was talking about. Former CEO credits small baker for life-changing turnaround inside. The baker worked like she always had. Flour on her hands, dough rising on the counter, the oven warm and steady. She didn't look up when people stared. She never had. A woman near the front finally spoke. "You're her, aren't you?" The baker paused only long enough to wipe her hands. "I'm just the baker," she said calmly. "But you changed his life," the woman insisted. The baker met her eyes gently. "He changed his own." The woman stepped back, unsure what to say. That afternoon, a reporter came. He stood awkwardly near the door, not wanting to interrupt. "I was hoping for a few words," he said. She shook her head. "I don't do interviews, but people want to hear from you," he pressed. She smiled faintly. People already heard what mattered. She handed him bread. He left without another question. Across town, the former CEO watched the news quietly. They talked about him stepping down. They talked about profits. They talked about risk. Then they talked about her. "She saved him," one voice said. He shook his head at the screen. "No," he whispered. "She reminded me." He turned off the TV and walked to the bakery. Inside, she was helping an elderly man count change. "Take it," she said. "It's enough." The man smiled and left. "You should be careful," he said softly to her. "They're building the story around you." She nodded. "I know. Aren't you worried?" he asked. She looked around the bakery. "At what?" She replied, "Bread still needs baking." Over the next few days, things got louder. People offered donations, invitations, awards. She refused all of them. One evening, she closed early and sat alone, staring at the empty room. For the first time, the attention weighed on her. Not because it was tempting, because it was distracting. The next morning, she did something unexpected. She put up a small sign. "Bread available. Stories not for sale." Some people laughed. Some nodded in understanding. Most stayed anyway. That afternoon, a woman walked in with a child. The child looked thin, tired, quiet. The baker noticed immediately. She knelt and handed the child a small roll. "Eat when you're ready," she said. The child smiled shyly. The former CEO watched from the corner, heart full. Later, as they cleaned up, he spoke. "You could do so much with this attention," he said. "You could change things on a bigger scale." She wiped the counter slowly. "I am changing things," she replied. "One person at a time," he nodded. "I don't regret what I did," he said. "Even losing the company." She looked at him. "You didn't lose it," she said. "You outgrew it." That night, the world argued online. Was he brave? Was she naive? Was this sustainable? None of it reached the bakery. The next morning, she didn't open the shop. The lights stayed off. People gathered outside, confused. A note was taped to the door. "Back tomorrow." Taking a day to rest. He found her at home, kneading dough slowly. "You disappeared," he said. She smiled. "I rested." He hesitated. "You know they won't forget you." She nodded. "That's okay. What if they move on?" he asked. She looked at the dough in her hands. "Then they were never here for the right reason," she said. She placed the dough in a bowl and covered it. "Bread rises when left alone," she added. "People do too," he smiled. In that quiet kitchen, far from headlines and noise, he understood something deeply. She never wanted recognition. She wanted continuity. And that choice, to walk away from attention instead of chasing it, made her more powerful than any title ever could. Time didn't stop for either of them. It slowed. The bakery reopened the next day, just as it always had. Same early lights, same warm smell, same quiet hands shaping dough before sunrise. People still came, some for the bread, some for the story. The baker treated them all the same. She learned their names, remembered how they liked their loaves, asked nothing in return. Across the city, the former CEO rebuilt his life without the noise that once defined it. No corner office, no assistants waiting outside doors, no constant urgency. He worked differently now. He consulted, listened, spoke at small gatherings, not conferences. When people asked him what saved him, he never mentioned bread first. He talked about being seen. Months passed. His body grew stronger, his voice steadier. The fear that once ruled his days no longer decided his nights. One morning, he walked into the bakery just as the sun broke through the window. She looked up and smiled. "You're late," she said. "I was thinking," he replied. She raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous," he laughed. "I've been asked to return," he said carefully. She stopped kneading. "Return?" she asked. "To lead again," he explained. Different structure, shared power, real accountability. She studied his face. "And what do you want?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I want to stay human," he said. She nodded. "Then you already know the answer." He did. He stayed involved, but not consumed. He chose limits, chose people, chose meals that were shared, not skipped. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the bakery. No return address. Inside was a short note. "You fed more than my body. Thank you." She folded it and placed it in a drawer. That drawer was already full. One evening, as they closed the bakery together, he spoke quietly. "You never told me why you chose bread," he said. She locked the door and leaned against it. "Because bread doesn't pretend," she replied. "It's simple, honest. It shows up the same way every day." He nodded. "And because," she added, "it reminds people they're allowed to need." They stood there for a moment, listening to the city breathe. "I think people believe miracles have to be loud," he said. She smiled softly. "They don't," she replied. "They just have to be consistent." Years later, someone would tell the story differently. They would say the baker cured a CEO, that one loaf changed everything. That kindness fixed what money couldn't. But the truth was quieter. Bread didn't heal him. Safety did. Routine did. Being treated like a person, not a problem, did. The baker never became famous. The CEO never became untouchable again. And that was the miracle. Because the world didn't change overnight. But one man learned how to eat again. One woman proved care didn't need permission. And somewhere, someone watching learned this. You don't save people by fixing them. You save them by standing close enough so they don't disappear. The bakery lights turned off for the night. Tomorrow they would turn on again. And the bread would rise just like people do, when given time, warmth, and dignity.